I should probably not be burning my fingers with this topic, but I'm gonna do it anyway, because that's what we do on this channel. But honestly, I do think there are multiple angles that are just not really talked about or not really discussed. It's always, it's bad. But what if I tell you it's actually not as bad as you think? Or maybe it is. Let's talk about it. Yo, what's going on guys? My name's Chivalric and today we're going to be talking about MTX and why I don't think it is actually as bad as people make it out to be. I know that probably sounds very controversial and I know it actually is very controversial to say such a thing, but I think there's just more sides to the story than people like to admit, and it's always it's bad, and it spreads a lot of negativity around the game, and it's my favorite game and I don't want negativity to be around it, and I know this video is not going to stop it, but I at least want to discuss it because I also do think it's an interesting subject. And I also do think a lot of people are just misunderstanding how things work. But before we get into this video, 86% of you guys are not subscribed. We're still on the road to 1,000 subscribers. It's really appreciated if you would help me out to get to that goal. It's a long-term goal for me for this channel. So if that is something you want to help me out with and you enjoy these videos, consider clicking subscribe. Also like the video if you do enjoy it. Join in the comment section down below. Please be civil. Make at least somewhat intelligent comments, guys. Just think about it for a minute and don't just splurge something down like, oh, bad, you're defending Jagex. Like, bro, I'll generally just delete it because that is just not needed. I love having genuine discussions, but please just have some takes. And obviously everyone's opinion is valid. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's opinions, but I'm talking about those comments like, oh, dude, you're just sucking off Jagex. Bad. Like, I can't do anything with those. So, yeah, anyway, let's get into it. So first things first, let's clarify something. And that is something a lot of people struggle to accept. But this is a fact. I talk to people within the gaming industry, not that work for Jagex, but for other companies. So, I mean, with how everything has been going with RuneScape, it is very safe to assume that it's the exact same thing. And people call it excuses, and people call the JMods being lazy or whatever. Go watch my video on toxicity on JMods. I go into more detail with that, but just in general, like, people say it's an excuse, but corporate decides whatever happens in the game. Accept it. That's the reality of modern gaming. Usually most games, including RuneScape in this case, well, Jagex, is owned by an investment company. The investment company wants to make as much money with as little investment as possible. That's how it works for most video games. Minimal effort, most profit. That's just any simple business practice. Pretty much the whole idea of like milking the cow until it's dry and then we're selling it on to the next idiot that's going to do the exact same thing. It really sucks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's just the reality of gaming and there's not much we can really do about it, because you can say, well, we can't buy it. Well, then they just let the game die. And running a game nowadays, which we'll get into a little bit later, also costs a lot of money. So just someone just buying it up is also not really that realistic. Unless that person's really rich, of course, and has a lot of passion for the game. But let's be honest, that's hopeful thinking. It's not going to happen. So just want to clarify that to begin with. That is just a fact. Corporate just tells the game, like developers, that's what the people said that I talked to as well. They just get like, okay, you need to add this into the game, aka like, for example, a yak track in the case of RuneScape, or these MTXs or these events or whatever, to make as much money as possible. You're going to promote as possible, you're going to act excited about it, and they just have to do it. And it doesn't matter if it fits in with the theme of the game or whatever, as long as they make their money. That's the reality of gaming. If you don't believe me, go look it up on the internet. It's all over there. You don't even have to talk to people that work in the game industry to know that. That is just the reality of it. Just literally type it into Google. How does MTX work within the gaming industry and how does corporate affect it? Like, you will find enough on it. But let's just get into the actual MTX first that we have in RuneScape, which I don't think is that bad at the moment. And you're probably thinking, dude, what do you want about blah, blah, blah. You can buy experience, you can buy ranks and whatever. That's all these arguments I see. But honestly, first things first, the real people that go for ranks, like the actual, like, you know, for skills, the top 200, 300, 400 is getting achieved in the first 3 months or first 6 months, where there's still a grace period on stars and lamps. And I do think it will become an issue if that grace period will be removed, and then I can get that uproar. But in general, the real people that play for real ranks on the high scores, they do not, they're not even able to buy lamps or stars or any form of experience to achieve those ranks. And let's be honest, no one cares about rank 548. Like, no one cares about that person. I'm sorry to say that to you, but in general, even if you would buy a 200 mil, for example, which is a serious rank, dude, that will cost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. If you've not seen the Dovidas video on him buying Max, I'm pretty sure he spent 15 grand at the time. As of me making the video, the prices even went up. So that is 400 million experience, I believe, to get to Max or something around that, like 500 million experience. So like, let's say half of it, in the case of 400, is 200 mil. That would still be 7.5 grand to get a 200 mil. I don't know how much you care about that rank 548, but that's not gonna happen, bro. Like, no one is going to do that. And yet again, RuneScape to that extent is kind of more single player now's game as well. Like, it's your account. Like, it's a I see it as a single player game in a multiplayer world. You might see that differently, but let's be honest, it's your achievements, and anyone who's buying money like via bonds or, you know, experience, it's just them really ruining the game for themselves, really. And if that's what they want to do, sure. Like, RuneScape is not a competitive game. Like, it would be an issue, however, if, let's say, RuneScape was fully PvP and I could buy better things with my money than you could by just playing the game. Like how it is in, like, for example, it used to be in Call of Duty like that. If I spend my money on loot boxes, I was able to get a better gun that did more damage and was firing faster than you, and then you would lose, not because you were worse than me, but just because I spent more money on the game and I'm better. And that's just not the case in RuneScape. But you could say, oh yeah, people can buy gear by buying bonds. And I mean, sure, but how does that affect you directly? Besides maybe some economic things, but even so, like, the economy when it comes to especially high-level items is still very stable. So even that argument would just make no sense to me, but prove me different. But I'm just saying it from a perspective, how does it directly affect you? And there is something that affects you, and that I will get into in a little bit, and that's obviously the investment of money that's not coming from MTX into the game, but we'll get into a bit more detail of that as well in a little bit. But let's go back to that MTX topic for a little bit as well, like how I don't think it is as bad, because a lot of the content that gets into MTX, like even the yak tracks, it's just reskin things. Like maybe a yak track takes a little bit more to develop, but personally I don't really mind yak tracking. Like to me it's just a better way to gather my clue scrolls via the big book instead of just only smithing, because I want to get all those like yak track things. I think it's just cool getting up some cosmetics, pets, whatever. Like I like it. You might not, and it's something you can or you don't have to interact with. But what I'm trying to say is a lot is just recycled or reskinned content that you cannot tell me that will take longer than like a day to make. Like the Green Santa Head event, for example. The wrapping paper's been in the game for a couple of years. The NPCs that were related to the event were also in the game for a couple of years. Most of the items are just reskins of other items, or are just very simple to make because they are based off other items like the turkey leg, etc. Like it's bad. Obviously the Green Santa Head is literally just a recolored red or black Santa Head, so like that is not as terrible. Like that doesn't take much time to make anyway. But to get into that toxicity of that Green Santa Head event, I do think that is actually an event that is very bad for the game, and that's not a good example of what I'm trying to say, because I don't think MTX is as predatory as people make it out to be. Like, it's not as bad as people say. Like, have you ever played any other game that is free to play that has MTX in it? Compared to that, RuneScape is nothing. You have a little pop-up in the top left about MTX, and you get one about MTX every so often when you haven't logged in for a little while, but that's it. Go log into COD Mobile, literally download it, you get 7 pop-ups before you even can play. Same with Genshin, it is also quite pushed badly, and they make you even feel like missing out. And that's what they did with the Green Santa Head, and that's why I think it's not a good event, is they make you feel like you were missing out. But then again, you could also say it's just a cosmetic and whatever. Like, I just don't think it was a good event, but more so because they said like, oh, you can only get it via wrapping paper, so a lot of people spent money on getting wrapping paper through Treasure Hunter, and then it got directly added to Treasure Hunter without them telling us. And I feel like if they were just upfront about it and be like, hey, it just came from Treasure Hunter, then I think it would have been still not good, but a lot less worse, while just lying to people saying it would not come from Treasure Hunter and then adding it anyway. But yeah, anyway, like, it used to be a lot worse. Remember when we got Chaotix? At the time Chaotix were in Treasure Hunter, they were still not best in slot, but they were still really, really viable to use with most bossing. And just the thought of that, like, there's like, it would be a problem if within the MTX there would be items that are better or that would normally take a lot of time, because when the Chaotix were in MTX, you couldn't token farm like you could do now. You can get Chaotix for like 2 or 3 hours now, but back in the day, that wasn't the case. So that is good that they got rid of that, and that is just experience, and just experience really in most cases. And let's be honest, RuneScape hasn't been about experience in years and years and years and years and years. But as I mentioned before, something that is really, really bad, and that is probably the issue that most people have with MTX, is RuneScape is making more and more money every single year, but we don't see more and more reinvesting within the team that makes RuneScape. And I think that is the issue that a lot of people have, but I feel like they don't work properly enough, and they just become like idiots that just scream, MTX bad, like, I get it, like, I care so much about this game, and that's why I want positivity to be around. And I'm not saying MTX is a positive thing, but yet again, it brings in a lot of money, and the problem is that money is not being reinvested. That money is not getting reinvested into the game, and it's just them pocketing all the money. Like, corporate is just pocketing all the money, and that is just sad. It's really, really sad, because I feel like this team, and people were saying this on Twitter as well, like, this team and this game has so much potential, but it's just not getting lifted up upon, because if you like it or not, but the cost and complexity of game development has gone up in the last 10 years. I see a lot of arguments saying like, oh yeah, 10 years ago, we would get like huge updates every like 3-4 weeks or something. And yes, we did. Like, that was the reality. But keeping in mind the cost of making a game, like, I looked this up, the cost of making a game has gone up dramatically in the last 10 years. I'll put the article in the description down below if you're interested in reading that, but it's gone up tremendously over the last 10 years. And that just applies to Jagex as well. And the thing is, if you do not invest more money to kind of just go along with the increase of cost into, like, you know, increasing your team, making the team bigger, investing more money in the team so you can actually, you know, keep that same level of content, then, you know, we will get what we get now, and we get less good content compared to 2010 than we would otherwise have had if they would actually invest in the team. And that's the problem with corporate. They just want the money, and they just don't care about the game that much. But one thing I do want to point out, and a lot of arguments I've seen made on Twitter, because I responded to a Twitter thread also kind of like baiting people to respond and seeing what people were thinking. I saw a lot of arguments saying like, this doesn't draw in new players, but that is stupid. I'm sorry if you think that is genuinely a stupid argument, and I'm going to tell you why, because I'm not just going to call you stupid, but I don't agree with that at all. Because the problem with new players is not MTX. Any new player that is playing a free game is expecting microtransaction, because that's the standard in gaming industry for any free game, because everyone knows that's the only way they can make money. And obviously RuneScape has a membership, but usually new players start with free to play and they see MTX, and it is not as like aggressive, as I mentioned before, as most other games. And the problem with new players doesn't lie with the MTX guys. Honestly, get that in your head. People don't care. Like, I've talked to newer players for just in general as a streamer. Like, I get a lot of people that follow me because of other games that I played that they get into RuneScape and they like it, and they don't mention MTX. And I asked some of them about MTX, they were like, dude, it's not that bad. Like, I played XYZ game and it's 10 times more terrible than RuneScape. But the problem is, RuneScape is a very complex game, and it's not up to today's standards anymore. And I should really make a video on that as well. Like, I made one earlier this year about the new player experience not being that well, but I think I can do a better job on that. But the game is too complex, and within gaming, a lot has changed. About, like, back in the day when we were, you know, trying to explore RuneScape and trying to figure everything out, we didn't have that many games to play. Look at all the games everyone has to play now, like all the free games. Like, why would you spend so much time on learning a complex game like RuneScape when you can play another game that's probably just as fun, that is a lot less complex? But honestly, I generally think that the problem lays more with MTX not being properly reinvested than the actual MTX being that bad. Like, the team is just understaffed for what they were supposed to be doing. But then again, I do also want to say, I looked up the updates that we got over the last few years. And this year, of course, we have had Zoe's Extinction Quest, 2 mini quests, the best quality of life, in my opinion, with the Combat Strike, and upcoming Central Boss is obviously up for this year. And, you know, last year we had such a great year. So obviously anything topping last year would be difficult. And this year will probably be a little bit more underwhelming. But, you know, like last year we had, I wrote this down, like 4 mini quests. There's an Unders quest, City of Santissan quest, new spells, Go Up to Dungeon 3, Vex Matriarch, Divination rework, Micro Archaeology Design, Golden Party Head event, which I thought was really sick. And 2020 was a lot more underwhelming. But then again, 2020 was the center of the pandemic, and people can call that excuses, but let's be honest, if you have worked during the pandemic, it affects everything, bro, like including a game like Jagex. So I cut them slack for 2020, but even 2019, some of the highlights were Anachronia, Archaeology, Mining and Smithing rework, multiple quests, 120 skill. So, you know, the argument of us not getting great content is also sometimes a bit exaggerated, I feel like, because I feel like we might have too high of a standard. And 2010 was good, and 2011 as well, but as I said, the cost has gone up and the complexity of game development and the investment hasn't come back into the team as it should have done. So in general, I feel like for what the team is doing with the resources they are having, I think they're doing a fantastic job. And if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But I think for what they have, the resources they have right now, they're doing a fantastic job on the game. So obviously, they can always do better, but that's with everything. They just need more money to actually do better. Because I feel like they're trying the hardest that they can, but they just do not have the money to do so. But anyway, let me know in the comment section down below what you think. It's a long video. If you made it to the end, you're an absolute legend. Let me know in the comment section down below if you are a legend, if you qualify to be a legend. But yeah, leave a like as well. Subscribe if you're new. And my name's Chivalric. I'll see you guys in my next video.